Hi guys, I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture.
And I'm apparently Sidewick from WhatCulture.
And don't forget you can download the news as a podcast by searching for WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, for daily wrestling podcasts. But Michael Sidgwick, what have we got coming up today?
We have dun 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 dun. Wedding bells are crying out for Lana and Bobby Lashley.
Fallout from TLC.
A medical update on the status of Kairi Sane.
A superstar shoots on TLC.
A sprint of a NXT Championship match coming up this Wednesday and when.
And major spoilers for next week's Monday Night Raw. But before we get into all that, let us start with Samoa Joe. Now, we are sort of going to refer a little bit to what happens on next week's Monday Night Raw, but don't worry, no spoilers just yet. The headline news is the fact that Samoa Joe looks set to return to in-ring action. Now, of course, he's been suffering from that thumb injury. He suffered in early September. He's been wearing the cast. He's been on WWE Backstage. He's been involved in the WWE commentary team, but by the looks of things, he appears to be medically cleared and looks set to return to action before the year is out. This is great news.
Yes, absolutely. I have obviously got no idea how exactly he's going to return, but he's been such like an amiable, funny presence on the commentary booth, and he's kind of done everything he's done as a heel. I'd love to see him on a face run tear.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit like Kevin Owens, isn't he? He's such a good badass that people really like him. Yeah. So when he's that badass, but also a nice guy into the bargain as well, so many people are going to get behind him. Do you think this could potentially open enough people higher up's eyes to him that they could consider him again for the sort of world title picture?
You've got to hope so, because time's running out for Joe. I think, as I've mentioned, he's sort of a busted flush as a heel. It's so weird how they've contrived to do this, because he's a legitimate badass that, because of the way he's been booked, you actually can't take him very seriously. So I'm hoping the fact that we all know he's a great talker, they know he's a great talker. I don't think they've realised just how charming he is, and how, as you said, Owens is the perfect comparison that he can get over in that kind of role.
He's almost CM Punk-esque in the fact that when he's off with an injury and put on commentary, it's almost like their eyes have suddenly been opened to him of like, oh, he's just amazing at promo. We always knew he was good at promo, and you know, fans of Joe's knew he was fantastic all the way through. He just, like, imagine if he, well, someone else had been given the stuff that he was given to do in that AJ Styles stuff, they would not have got it over.
Oh, yeah,
but they did. But now he is set to return to action. I'll explain the reason why once we get to the Raw spoilers, but I know it's all about next week's Raw, which has already been taped, of course, so we'll get to that a little bit later on. But there's some more news coming out of that Raw, which we need to tell people about, because I need to get my suit and everything ready for next week's Raw.
Indeed. In a segment on last night's Raw, Lana asked Bobby Lashley to ask him to marry her.
Well, technically, she said, I want you to ask me to marry me, because she can't get her lines right ever. But yes, fantastic news. They are set to be married.
Fantastic.
This has continued on next week's Raw. No great spoilers to tell you about there. But on the 30th of December, Monday Night Raw, they're going to be married. And I love weddings in wrestling on TV.
Right, I'm the kind of person who just kind of, at this point, loathes sports entertainment, but I don't know how, if you've got a soul inside that body of yours, you could watch a WWE wedding and not just well up inside or laugh. They always get weddings right. I'm telling you now, it's the same thing I've often said in the past. If they call up Matt Riddle and get him wrong, then forget about it. Unsubscribe.
Yeah.
If they do a wedding that's boring and not loads of fun, then that's it. The game is done.
What are some of your favourite, well, we've got the nice ones, I don't want to talk about nice ones. What are some of your favourite car crash weddings, just in wrestling, because we can include like Brooke, Hogan and Bully Ray in there.
My favourite wedding of all time is Teddy Long and Crystal.
Oh my God, I forgot about that one.
It's absolutely phenomenal entertainment. They go the whole 9 yards. There's an R&B gospel band.
So good.
There's like Teddy Long with
Robert just...
It's the best bump, the best worst bump you've ever seen in your entire life. They even go so far as to like sprinkle little character moments among the congregation. It's just an exceptional bit of business.
It is really good. My favourite, I still remember being sort of out of wrestling, but me and my friend finding out that Edge was going to marry Lita on Raw, and we were like, we have to stay up and watch it. And I got to watch a priest get tombstoned as a result of it, so that was always good. Right, let's move on and talk about TLC. Loads of stories to fill you in on, of course. It was a bit of a car crash towards the end of that pay-per-view, and we'll get to Dana Brooke shooting on the finish to TLC in a second. Before that, though, an update on TLC, and perhaps one of the reasons why it didn't necessarily go to plan is the news that has come out that both Triple H and Vince McMahon weren't at TLC, presumably due to their commitments with NXT and the XFL. It's starting, Michael Sidgwick. That is due to, that is reported, sorry, I should say, by John Pollock of Post Wrestling. And in an update, Dave Meltzer has explained that Paul Heyman took side of the Raw side of things, whilst Bruce Pritchard took control of the SmackDown matches. Now, Vince and Triple H were involved in the production meeting, so they kind of okayed, presumably, the overarching way things went, but they weren't involved backstage, and it is pretty much universally agreed, that's a direct quote from Dave Meltzer, that not last night's, but Sunday night's pay-per-view was handled poorly, and everyone kind of agrees, and this will lead into your story a little bit, that a doctor should have been sent out for the main event because Kairi Sane did not look in a good place.
Indeed. Adam Wilborn, can you remember when everyone was really, really tired of Brock Lesnar holding the Universal title throughout last year? And then people said, oh, Raw's going to get magically good again when he drops it. Didn't happen. Everyone says now, oh, Vince McMahon just needs to go away and WWE will become this magical place. Like, absolutely not. There are profound institutional problems within that company that don't necessarily end with Vince McMahon, as was on full grim display on Sunday night.
And it's arguably worse because there's no one even there to make a decision. It's like, you know, I know Vince isn't there and power has been passed on to someone, but they're always kind of nervous of Vince not looking over their shoulder, but going mental at them for making the wrong decision. And the hesitation to not send out a doctor when you could see, myself and Adam Nicholas were doing the live stream, you could see something was going on with Kairi Sane, because there's no way that Charlotte Flair and Kairi Sane mess up a spear spot unless one of them's been knocked a bit goofy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was a clear, like literally everyone watching except those who make the decisions and are meant to be best qualified to make those decisions knew what was going on. It was fairly disgraceful if you ask me.
Kairi and Asuka are two of the most talented wrestlers that WWE has on their payroll. They ran into each other at one point in the match, which should tell you all you need to know, that this is more than just not being on the same page. This is a legitimate concern. And you've got a bit of an update with Kairi Sane.
Yes, and it kind of feeds into your update, Mr. Wilborn. Kairi Sane has not been cleared to wrestling. That comes from Ryan Satin of Pro Wrestling Sheet. And additionally, she, via a thumbs up emoji on Twitter, has kind of confirmed that if she's not cleared or if she's not completely 100%, she's at least on the mend or is in a position to fight.
Yeah, of course, we reported yesterday that she suffered presumably a concussion. No word officially on that just yet, but good to see that hopefully she's on the mend, like you say, getting better. Now, there's speculation on last night's Monday Night Raw because, well, we presume Kairi Sane came out for Asuka's match, but we couldn't see her. Some people are claiming that you never actually saw the person who came out with Asuka's face and they just had an umbrella. So whether they get sent out someone else dressed as Kairi Sane, we don't know. But all we know is she obviously didn't compete on last night's Monday Night Raw, and it's generally been accepted she is not medically cleared to compete just yet. So of course, as always, we hope she gets well soon.
Yeah, one more thing on this. So we were discussing whether WWE needs to introduce way better concussion protocols. What struck me is very disturbing on last night's Raw. Obviously, they worked this spot, but like one night after Kairi Sane might have been concussed via a barricade into into a barricade on a position of the ringside area where there was no mat, they go and run a hammerlock DDT spot onto exposed concrete.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether they just realised there's no risk here, even though there was literally danger the night before, or they're trying to feed into the crowd's anxiety of what's happened to Kairi Sane to try and drive the heat of the finish to that gauntlet match.
Yeah.
Either way, they're either being cheeky or completely and utterly flagrant about safety. Wasn't a fan of that at all.
No. And let's continue by talking about the finish to TLC. Not necessarily for the finish to the TLC match, which of course main evented with the women's tag titles, as Bayley pointed out, the same year that they were, well, birthed. But the seemingly 2 seconds that they gave Asuka to celebrate with those titles before immediately cutting to that mass brawl and Roman Reigns spearing King Corbin just onto all of the goobers, basically. And Dana Brooke was on Instagram Live and then subsequently shot on the finish to the pay-per-view, saying something that I totally just disagreed upon was that they didn't let the women have their time to shine. I think that's something they needed to do, especially after the match, was give those women the appreciation they deserve. Now, this has kind of been lost in amongst all the complaints about the fact that the match went too long and Kairi Sane's injury and just the fact that they weren't really working as a team, those four. But that did piss me off at the end of TLC as well, the fact that regardless of how good or bad the match was, this is the main event of the pay-per-view with some titles that you're meant to seem important, and they just went, right, you won. Anyway, back to the Roman Reigns, King Corbin stuff. Yeah,
a fundamental part of pro wrestling is to be able to register what's happening. It separates the geniuses from the merely very good pro wrestlers, and this moment wasn't allowed to register.
No.
You weren't allowed to leave with the idea that the Kabuki Warriors had just beaten the two most pushed and therefore probably best in storyline female performers on the roster. It just went straight to this brawl, and what annoys me is that they'd already filmed something backstage to convey the idea that the tension hadn't stopped, it hadn't eased. This is going to continue presumably into SmackDown, which A, good.
Well, that's something to talk about on Friday at least.
And B, like, I get it. I've seen the fact that the match hasn't, like, it's officially ended, but still out of control. I've already seen that. You didn't tell me anything new. The only thing it did was detract from and undermine that moment.
And also, where were Roman's friends the entirety of that match against King Corbin? But anyway.
And they were only friends when the script said they have to be friends.
Right, okay.
And it's really easy to believe in.
Let's move on and talk about some good wrestling. I cannot wait for the Wednesday Night War this week, and NXT has teased something huge.
Yes, absolutely. They haven't teased it. They've outright announced it in a similar measure to the launch of AEW Dynamite, which was counter-programmed with a sprint between Adam Cole and Matt Riddle, subsequent to which they said, oh, by the way, it's a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, we've just done this 150-mile-per-hour PWG match. It's the opener, but it's a marathon. We do marathons, not sprints. And they're doing it again this week on NXT. The NXT Championship match between Finn Balor and Adam Cole will open the show commercial-free on the USA Network as part of what I like to call NXT Takeover, : don't watch AEW after Christmas, guys. We will give you TV matches for free. Don't worry about the competition. We're the competition. Even though it's the same company, we're the competition.
It's madness.
It's one of those things where it's quite hard to be cynical about because you're going to get a great match. You're going to get a great TV match. And unlike Adam Cole versus Matt Riddle, which I thought was very like A to B storytelling, they've built this for like several weeks now. They've gone the right way about it. It's just cheeky as all hell. The amount of times, Wilborn, I've spent watching Monday Night Wars retrospectives on the network, and they're always like burying Eric Bischoff for his fiendish tricks. It's like, wasn't he unfair? Wasn't he despicable? Wasn't it artless? Oh, we're just going to do the exact same thing.
Do you think Gargano returns on Wednesday?
I don't know exactly how, but they will schmoz that finish. Like, it's an absolute certainty for me.
Regardless, Wednesday night is when the good wrestling is, and it's going to be on both shows this week.
Away from my cynicism about the whole practice, the silver lining is that you're going to get the deserved main event of that show in Rhea Ripley versus Shayna Baszler, which should be absolutely tremendous. They've built that absolutely perfectly. That is the true main event. So hopefully this whole cheeky, get the people away from AEW, you don't need to watch that, it's rubbish. Hopefully all of that will converge to a great, well-earned main event.
And if that doesn't work, $1 Million Mania on Wednesday nights. Right, very finally, quickly, we're going to run through some Raw spoilers. So if you don't want to know what happens on next week's Monday Night Raw, skip forward 2 minutes. We'll get to the Twitter questions and the and finally, of course. But I'll quickly run through because, of course, they taped next week's Monday Night Raw this week after this week's Monday Night Raw, which that crowd must have enjoyed. So just to run through, not all of the matches, but just some of them. Kevin Owens defeated Mojo Rawley in a Christmas street fight. That's not really that important, but to tell you what happened afterwards is we had Owens cutting a promo on Seth Rollins and AOP, calling them out, and I love this line, he calls them out, and then comes to the ring and beat him down. Right, we have Fallout more from Becky Lynch. She, of course, cut a promo on this week's Raw. Next week, she cuts a promo, calls out Asuka. Asuka comes out, agrees on a match for a later date, but it's not made official for any event. But Lynch has told Asuka to name the place and the time. I reckon that's going to be the Royal Rumble. We have the OC defeating both Randy Orton and the Viking Raiders. Another win for the OC against the Raw Tag Team Champions there. Styles pinning Orton in that match. Rusev defeated No Way Jose. What a shame. And then cut a promo saying he's glad for Bobby Lashley and Lana. Bobby Lashley also won his match, and they announced, as I said, that wedding for the 30th of December. And in the main event, the match that was set up this week on Monday Night Raw, with Seth Rollins, well, not winning the gauntlet, but just sacking off the entire gauntlet, basically. Seth Rollins loses to Rey Mysterio in next week's main event, but that is by DQ due to interference by AOP. They go to put Rey through an announce table, but Samoa Joe won't move for them. AOP beat Joe down, and Rollins hits a stomp on Mysterio to finish off the show whilst AOP and Rollins pose. And on a similar sort of note, that seems to suggest that going forward, we could well have a 6-man match. Rollins and AOP versus Samoa Joe, Rey Mysterio, and Kevin Owens.
Yeah, that should be fire.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's move on to your Twitter questions now. That's for people who've muted the audio, just in case. The spoilers are gone now. Let's move on to your Twitter questions at WhatCulture WWE if you want to get in touch, of course. First question today comes from Christopher Blade. He says, it's been a long year. What were your favourite and most hated WWE matches of 2019? But you can't say Goldberg versus Taker or the Hell in a Cell main event.
Okay, the Crown Jewel main event.
Okay, and your favourite match of 2019?
Daniel Bryan versus Kofi Kingston was genuinely magic, in which Daniel Bryan was just so tremendous at putting himself over as the most formidable and best wrestler on the planet, and he made those 11 years of struggle condensed into like 25 minutes of just unbearable, incredible drama. Actual perfection from main roster WWE.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. If we're allowed to sneak in an NXT match, I'm going to say Cole Gargano, 2 out of 3 falls.
Yeah, of course, it was great.
Takeover, but I would be inclined to agree in terms of main roster stuff. And yeah, anything Saudi Arabia related for my worst match. Jason Sawatka gives us our second question of the day. It says, it seems like WWE brings back a major name each year for WrestleMania, with some of the latest being Batista, Triple H, and Goldberg. What major name would you like to see return at WrestleMania 36?
I've seen enough part-timers. This era has started since 2011, Wilborn, when they all but decided to say, right, the rest of the locker room is absolutely crap, so come on, Taker, let's me and you have a match. That's what Triple H said all the way back in 2011. Obviously, the next year, it kind of started in earnest with Rock and Lesnar's returns. I couldn't care less.
CM Punk?
They'd ruin him. That's the thing. That's the problem. Like, I love how his legacy's preserved. He's this like iconoclastic figure. He's a myth now, and it's nice to have like a legend like that you can just sort of see went out on his own sword. Goldberg can still do really entertaining stuff in 2 minutes. So Goldberg again for me.
Absolutely. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below on which legend you'd like to see at WrestleMania 36 next year. And final question today comes from Matt Ryan, who says, will we be seeing more of members of the NXT roster who aren't on TV, frequently on Raw and subsequently SmackDown, or we're seeing the Virtuoso on Raw this week a one-off?
Most assuredly, because it's not a one-off. Looking at the spoilers ahead to the Christmas episode of Monday Night Raw. Yeah, I guess so. I think the TV time on NXT is at a premium, obviously, because they have to compete. They don't have to. They've got so much money that they don't know what to do with it. It's not like life or death. They don't have to compete, God damn it. They could have stayed on the network or just went to a different night. But yeah, there are several talented guys and girls in NXT who are thoroughly deserving of an opportunity that obviously the new paradigm means they can't. So yeah, I would just like it adequately explained. I would never begrudge anyone who's really talented an opportunity, ever. I'm not that kind of person. I would just like, for my completely snarky, pedantic disposition, an explanation as to why the wildcard era is almost creeping back.
It's almost like they need a developmental for developmental.
Just send them to Evolve.
Right, let's move on to today's and finally.
Don't send them to Evolve.
And you talked a little bit about Bill Goldberg there, an incredible, menacing figure, until I saw this photo today on Squared Circle of Bill Goldberg with hair. Not so scary, are you, Bill? Yeah? It's like seeing like Jules or Andy, or in particular, Simon Miller with hair. You can't really look at them the same way, can you?
No, I thought Mike Awesome was that 70s guy, but it turns out it's Billy G.
Let us know your thoughts on that and all of today's news stories in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Myself and the Dadley Boys will be reviewing Raw a little bit later on today. Plus, let us know your thoughts and Twitter questions on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And watch there, follow both of us. You can follow him at
Promoted by AEW at M. Sidgwick.
You can follow me at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCultureWWE. My thanks to Michael Sidgwick. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.